Ganyu and Zhongli are coming back in 2.4, and they are very hyped up for very good reasons, but as I've had the opportunity to play them from C0 all the way up to C6, there are some things that aren't talked about all the time about these two characters, some downsides that really are kind of shoved under the rug, and some upsides that really aren't mentioned all that much either. So we're going to be digging deep into Ganyu and Zhongli, how they sort of have evolved with the meta and how they're doing in that meta and what is to come in 2.5. Come on in here, slap the sub, have a good day out there, and let's get into it. Now, Ganyu is known to be a very powerful character, especially in AoE situations, but she is held back a little bit by how the meta has evolved in the team compositions that she really wants to be utilized in to really meet her maximum potential here. So everyone knows Ganyu, charge attack hits extremely hard, elemental skill, Trail of the Keelan, leaves alone a little taunting flower, and obviously Celestial Shower is exceptionally powerful at doing AoE damage, boosting up Ganyu's own damage from her ascensions, as well as providing that constant cryo pressure to freeze enemies. She also has a ton of very powerful free-to-play options, as well as 5-star options for bows. You have the Amos bow and the Skyward Heart, both very powerful options for her. She can also utilize 4-star weapons that are crafted like the Prototype Crescent and the Hamayumi here as well. So no matter whether you're a free-to-play player, you're putting a little bit extra Primo Gems into your Ganyu, you have a lot of significant options for power level for her to take advantage. And that's a huge plus. The other huge plus is she has some of the easiest ways to be built in the game due to just how she works with her bonus crit chance on her spread arrow, as well as getting a guaranteed crit shot when you hit someone in the weak point. She also has access to the Blizzard Strayer set, which is one of her most plug and play team compositions, as long as you have the right team members for it. We're talking about the extra 20 to 40% increased crit rate, which leaves her good old charge shot level 2 spread, which is where most of her damage comes from, on a frozen target, 60% bonus crit chance. So getting a 100% crit chance Ganyu against frozen targets is not that hard to accomplish, and 80% against just chilled targets before we even get into her teammates selection. And if freeze isn't your thing, she also has other options for you, one of them being the Wanderer's Troop, giving elemental mastery and increased charge damage bonus, so you can melt enemies and do a bunch of damage this way as well if you want to use her in that fashion outside of a freeze team. And there's also that new 4-piece that just came out in 2.4, which also boosts up those cryo related bonus damage reaction. You get all this at C0, which is awesome, but there are some least talked about downsides when it comes to Ganyu's playstyle. Number one, as the meta has shifted, especially in higher tier floors of the Abyss, we see enemies that really can't be frozen all that easily, or it's just like one big monster, which really does not play well into her strength. She likes to do a lot of AoE damage, which isn't all that significant when you're fighting some single monster with millions and millions and millions of health. This also weakens one of our best team compositions all time, the Freeze team, which is made up of Ganyu and then either Mona or Kokomi, and then either Venti or Kazuha, and usually a Diona in there as well, or maybe you'll see a Shenhei from time to time. One of these teams that likes to group up a bunch of enemies, freeze them solid, and then just have you do a bunch of damage to them while they're continuously frozen over and over. If you can't group a bunch of enemies together because there's only one enemy, well, that's not a strength of that team anymore. And if you can't freeze an enemy because they're a big Mangu Kenki, well, that's not a good team to use in that situation either. The other big weakness here is that the team that she really wants to utilize as a freeze team cryo character, it is a little bit more taxing. She has some supports that are other 5-stars that she really is kind of locked behind to put this team together. Other characters like Ayaka, they can use someone like Barbara, Xingqiu, a lot more options here, where Ganyu's really sort of locked down to either Mona or Kokomi to get the most utilization out of constant AoE hydro applicators such as those two. Can't really use good old Barbara, can't use Xingqiu all that well in this team composition. You also are looking for, Venti or Kazuha because they have that nice AoE. Sucrose is an option, but is not nearly as good as either of those are, because Sucrose really wants to boost your elemental reaction damage, and you just want to freeze things. You're not taking full advantage of that either. So if you don't have those characters, it's going to be a little bit more weaker of a team for you, because she's not as easy to just throw in a couple of characters, Bennett, Ayaka, Xingqiu, and then like throw in like Diona or someone that is like a Sucrose to just throw them in there and do a bunch of damage that way. And then her last weakness, so to speak, is that she really wants to have some sort of shield character on her team because, well, if you get hit while you're charging your level 2 charge attack, it gets canceled and you lose a lot of DPS that way. So someone like Zhongli, Diona are very prominent members, and if you don't have those in your team composition, you're really going to get a little bit frustrated with that very slow charge attack when you're getting swarmed by a bunch of monsters in Genshin Impact. So while Ganyu is a very strong, even at C0 option, if you are missing a lot of these things we just talked about, you're going to be finding her a little bit weaker in comparison until you can sort of fit those pieces of the puzzle together in her own team composition. However, like we did state, very easy to build with artifacts and a lot of different weapons that are very good on her. Now, Zhongli is a man with a mission still in 2.4 and leading into 2.5, and we all know him from his giant shield. Dominus Lapid is still the best shield in the game, and on top of that, not only is it a giant shield, it has permanent uptime due to the fact that it lasts 20 seconds and the cooldown is only 12 seconds. So with a strong enough shield, you're going to be having it up 100% of the time. That's not all that it does though. It's one of the easiest ways to reduce your enemy's resistances to physical and elemental damage at the same time. It also will provide you with crystallization shields from the effect of the stone pillar constantly pulsing and interacting with other geo constructs around that area. We also have Planet Befall, which you can do some nice damage with and also petrify enemies. So you can catch the Fatuis right before they put their shields up and absolutely decimate them with this. It also has a very low energy cost of 40 and only a 12-second cooldown. Now, just like Ganyu, Zhongli is also very easy to build and is very powerful with minimal amount of investment. Even something like the Black Tassel for a bunch of HP is nice way for a free-to-play player to boost up his damage. You also have access to something like the Favoni's Lance to help fill up his own energy if you have no real energy battery for him in your party, and he also can be built for a little bit of crit chance and not only increase his damage from his elemental skill in his elemental burst, which is pretty significant even with minimal investment. It also was going to provide particles for not only Zhongli but the rest of your party as well. If you want to build him for more damage, well, you have access to stuff like the Deathmatch. If you bought the Battle Pass, Staff of Homo works on him very well as well. So he's got very powerful 4 and 5-star options once again. Now, this artifact selection is very interesting because you can build Zhongli in just about any way you want to. So you have access to 4-piece Noblesse Oblige for extra attack percent for your entire party. You have access to good old Tenacity, the Millicet set. If you have access to the enemies who want to stay right next to that pillar, this is going to give you another 20% attack buffer to everyone else in your party as well. So you can do very strong buffs with Zhongli, or you can build him for damage as well, build him for HP on the Tenacity set, maybe go ahead and fill him up with some Archaic Petra as well. Mix and match, a lot of different 2 pieces work very well. Whether you want to buff up his survivability in team play or boost his own damage with stuff like Archaic Petra and Noblesse Oblige, however you want to build him is going to be up to you. You also have access to very easy sort of a shield bot. That's his main thing, where you just give him HP on everything, or you can build them like this, where you have HP on your Sands, Geo Damage Goblet, and a Crit Chance Circlet to really sort of buff up that damage he's going to be doing from Planet Befall, and also still hitting a significant amount of HP between 30 and 40,000, which is going to leave you with a great amount of shields left on the battlefield. It's almost like doubling your active character's HP bar. And one of his great strengths is you can pair him with Albedo if you have access to Albedo, and they're one of the best sort of 2 characters that you can kind of slot into most teams out there, buffing up their own damage with ×2 Geo Resonance, the different interactions between the flower and the pillar, doing damage off the battlefield with both of them at the same time, both with 40 cost 12-second elemental bursts. It's just a wonderful thing to be able to slot in everywhere. But even then, you can just put Zhongli in a party on his own and just have him there for that big shield, and you're gonna love the way that you look with Zhongli on your team. That's not to say that Zhongli has no drawbacks whatsoever. We saw them implement already anti-geo, anti-shield characters in previous patches with Inazuma, where we have the new debuff that's going to take damage right from your HP bar. And we're in 2.5 going to see 3 new enemy types that really want to mess with characters who rely on shields as well, whether it fully blocks the damage that a character would do if they are shielded, healing enemies if you attack them while you have a shield on, or giving the enemies a shield of their own if you attack them when you have a shield on. That is something that you won't see until 2.5, but 2.5 is not that far away because we're in the very latter half of 2.4.